Good evening, and I'd like to welcome you to the Town of Strathmore public hearing. I now declare it open at 7:04 p.m. This is a public hearing of council pertaining to bylaw number 21-15. It is held this date, July 21st, 2021 at 7:04 p.m. in council chambers. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M-26, and amendments thereto. And I hereby declare the public hearing related to bylaw number 21-15 now open at 7:04 p.m. Can we have a motion to adopt the public hearing agenda?
I would so move.
Councillor, I've got Councillor Peterson, thank you. Councillor Peterson has a motion to adopt the public hearing agenda. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. And Legislative Services?
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw number 21-15 proposes to amend the land use bylaw to include regulations for advertising bench signs. Public notices for bylaw 21-15 were published at the Strathmore Times on July 9th and July 16th, 2021. Notice of the hearing was also posted on the town's social media site. Emails were also sent to several local realtors. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. The following rules of conduct will be followed during the public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point and shall be limited to 3 minutes in length. The order of presentation shall be the administration, then those in favor of the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes, and there will be no debating the bylaw. To date, no letters of support and none opposed have been received. Does the administration have any comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. My name's Chuck. I'll be presenting on behalf of administration tonight. I had help preparing this report this evening. I just want to say thanks to Megan Williams, our senior planner, and Kathy Jones, our development officer. So, administration is presenting a land use bylaw amendment tonight dealing with bench signs. I've got about 8 quick slides for everybody tonight, and I'm just going to go over background and context, talk about some of the proposed regulations, briefly touch on memorial benches, and finish with my recommendation. So the PowerPoint I'm using is included in your report. Just going to get started on the background and context. So as of today in the land use bylaw, there's no regulations for advertising benches. A picture of kind of what we're talking about is included on this slide here. Benches are mainly used for advertising. There is some public benefit to advertising benches. Currently, because we have no rules, staff can't respond to inquiries for new benches or enforce safety issues with existing benches. And tonight, staff are proposing to add rules. There's essentially 2 places that benches can be put: on public land or on private land. Sometimes a business wants to put a bench next to a sidewalk or roadway. Sometimes it's private property. We essentially have no rules right now, and we need rules in place. So we're proposing to amend the land use bylaw with a renewable development permit, kind of how we handle temporary signage today. So these rules will let us review land use considerations such as safety, corner visibility, triangle stuff, flashing lights, etc. We can't unjustly limit free speech in this review. We don't intend to add those rules. We're talking about safety and placement of the benches. Rules will let us regulate number of benches in one specific area, maintenance, accessibility, safety, and protection of the corner visibility as well. So just touching on some of the proposed regulations that we're proposing tonight. So benches must be in a location which is a benefit to the general public. Benches must be located 100 meters from another bench unless they're on opposite sides of the street. Benches must be adjacent or accessible to pedestrian areas. We can't just have them kind of out in the boonies. Benches must be located outside of the corner visibility triangle. So that's kind of involving when a vehicle makes a turn, they must be able to clearly see the street that they're turning onto. Sometimes stuff in the corner visibility can block views, so we want to make sure benches are outside of that corner visibility triangle for safety reasons. Some more of our proposed regulations: benches must have a maximum of one sign. There must be appropriate ground cover and landscaping around the bench. The exterior finish and appearance should complement the character of nearby buildings as well. So currently, there's lots of existing benches in town. Some were approved under a previous land use bylaw, some have not been approved. Tonight, we're kind of suggesting that there's a little bit of a grace period, and we propose that unapproved benches are to comply with the new rules by January 1st, 2022. So that new rules I've kind of talked about, and they would also require a permit. Notifications to the unapproved bench owners too can go out beforehand, and we can start to address some of these issues. Just going to briefly touch on memorial benches. So currently we have a policy 7603. It's our memorial bench and tree policy. It was included in your report. We aren't proposing any changes to this policy at this time. We're just including it as information. Although no new permit is required for a memorial bench, we would still like new memorial benches to be susceptible to the proposed rules that we're proposing tonight, if adopted. And just recommendation tonight is that council take into consideration all the information received at the public hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chuck, for your presentation. Are there any questions for Chuck from councillors? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone present who supports the bylaw who wishes to speak? We have no one calling in or anything. Thank you. Is there anyone present who opposes the bylaw who wishes to speak? And we have none. Is there anyone present deemed to be affected by the bylaw who wishes to speak? And again, no. Do the councillors have any further questions or any questions? I don't believe you had any. So then I hereby declare this public hearing for bylaw number 21-15 closed at 7:11 p.m. and will accept the motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Cox. We have a motion on the floor to accept the motion to adjourn. I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the next. Do I have to declare the public meeting open or not? I don't think I do. So we're on to item 4. We have no presentations or recognitions. And we move on to 5.1. We'll come back to the bylaw, and it is bylaw number 21-15, dealing with advertising benches. Chuck, will you be able to pop up in case there are any more questions?
So thanks, Council, and thanks everybody for my very brief presentation tonight. We're seeking second and third reading for the bylaw. We think it's due to error. We don't have current regulations in the land use bylaw to deal with this thing. In a previous bylaw, we did have rules, but when we've gone to review the current land use bylaw, there is nothing. So we're proposing to amend the land use bylaw with these requirements, and they're largely due to safety stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I will move second reading of bylaw 21-15.
Thank you very much. Now that we have a motion for second reading on bylaw number 21-15, is there any further discussion on that motion, after that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I would move third reading of bylaw 21-15, advertising benches.
Thank you very much. So it's land use bylaw amendment bylaw advertising benches. Thank you very much, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard the question, you've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Chuck. We have our next section is 5.2, Handy Bus MOU. And we have a delegation here tonight, I believe. Welcome. Mr. Legore, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have representatives of the Handy Bus Association here tonight to speak to any questions that council may have. We have presented you with a memorandum of understanding. I also circulated additional information that I received from Ms. Alice Booth, the chair of the Handy Bus Association, Tonight, what's on the agenda is the MOU that was drafted by the town and presented to the Handy Bus Association. This is the only MOU that administration is prepared to support at this time. The MOU that was being forwarded by the Handy Bus has cost increase in it that are unaffordable for the town at this time. And if council has any questions, they can refer them to the Handy Bus Association. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm prepared to answer any questions if there is any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Legore. Questions from councillors? Now, these are questions to you, or are they to the actual delegation?
Either to myself or the delegation, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Corbeil and then Councillor Cox.
Again, I think Councillor Cox is first. She can go ahead. You're okay?
Okay,
All
thank you.
right. I do have a quick question. Thank you very much for the MOU and stuff like that. How many trips approximately a year does a handy bus handle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we'll need to get that question repeated.
Councillor Corbeil, would you mind repeating that question?
Yeah, you bet I can. How many trips a year does a handy bus do for Strathmore residents? Like, how many are you expecting this year?
I don't have a total for from January to June, but in June we did 164 trips. In February it was 110, March 124, April 100, oh, I'm sorry, no, that's the clients. Total trips, 110 in June, 145 in May, 136 in April, 91 in March, 81 in February, and I have January for 153, but those trips in January, up to January, was a one-way trip. So if you went to Calgary and back, that was 2 trips. So basically, that 153 is divided in 2. In February, up to now, 1 trip is Calgary and back.
Does that
Your
help?
worship, may I continue?
Yes.
Yeah, are the majority of the trips to Calgary?
I can't hear. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Are the majority, like, are most of the trips done local, or are they into Calgary?
Most of them are into Calgary.
And I have one more last question. I'm sorry, Your Worship. What is the trip? What does it cost a Handy Bus member or a client to take that trip to Calgary and return?
$70.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Cox, or sorry, Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am not sure if this is for the ladies or if this is for Doug, but 1.4 of the MOU talks about a conflict of interest and that they would appoint one member of council as a non-voting member. I'm not sure I like the fact that it would be a non-voting member when we're contributing that kind of capital. My understanding, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but as a councillor, when we sit on a board, we represent that board first. Therefore, we would be representing the best interests of the handy bus if we were sitting on the board with the handy bus. Is that not correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when a council member is appointed to the Handy Bus Association, their focus and interest should be for the Handy Bus Association there. They're there repping the best interests of the Handy Bus Association, even though they're appointed by council. Thank you.
So that begs my next question, Doug. Should we not be voting members?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is a choice of council, whether you want to have yourselves there as a voting or non-voting member. The Handy Bus Association would have to agree to it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, that is my one problem with this. I do believe that if we're going to give that kind of money, that we should have a voting say on that board. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and that is council's prerogative. They can make a motion to amend that if they so wish. And then the Handy Bus Association would have to agree to it before signing it.
And I would wish to respond.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you. Welcome, Alice. Nice seeing you again.
Yes, hello. I'm Alice Booth, and this is Florence Vandervelde. And the lady, the councillor is very correct in a lot of that. But what we found over the last 4 years, that the councillors that were on, both here and the county, found themselves always feeling they were in a conflict of interest and couldn't do the best job for the handy bus. It seemed to be a huge problem over the last 4 years. So because we're now an operational board, we felt that we could accommodate them at the meeting and we would be doing the same thing, but they wouldn't have a vote, because that's where the contention for the last number of years has been. And secondly, under the Societies Act, they were quite concerned because the handy bus is a society, and the society was not operating it. The town was, which is government. So we had a government body, running the handy bus, and the two officials were the president and the vice president. So we were in a quandary of losing our society, our casino, and our grants, because the government was going back, looking at all the societies that called themselves societies, but was not really operating under the society's regulations. So for us to move forward, that was to include both the County of Wheatland and yourselves. It was a way that we could separate that government problem, right? And still have society.
And that makes perfect sense to me. I just think, and this is my take on it, and I hear you, but as councillors, as I already indicated, as well as Doug indicated, we are to act on the best interest of the board that we sit on. And so therefore, as we're representing the town with that kind of a contribution, I do think that we should have a vote. But I 100% hear what you're saying about your society, and I believe that what you've done is the right thing.
And I've got to say, you're right, under the MGA, that's exactly what any councillor sitting on a board is to do. But if they find themselves unable to do that, it harms the organization. And so we've already gone through that, and the board was quite adamant that this would accommodate both the board and the town and the council. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cox, and thank you, Alice, for your response. Councillor Peterson?
I have to ask you to speak up. I have a hearing problem, so if I don't hear you right, I can't answer you.
Okay, thank you. So councillors at home, if you could ask your questions loudly and clearly, that would really help. I know sometimes the internet can be a problem too, but Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say before I start that my attire is not a sign of disrespect for the office and for the council. I just found myself in a very unique situation and in the far reaches of northern British Columbia. But having said, I'd like to thank the Handy Bus and express my gratitude to you, Alice, for coming today, and also acknowledge my respect for yourself and for Mrs. Van der Velde for the long and tireless service you provided. I certainly enjoyed working with you before and respect what you've brought to the Handy Bus Association for a number of years. In terms of the issue of not having a voting member at the table, I certainly see the wisdom in what you've accomplished. I think that, you know, in the matters that Councillor Cox has identified, this council still has ultimate control over the vote in terms of the money that goes to the Handy Bus. And while they don't have a vote at the board, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have a voice. And that voice is very loud when it comes with a large check. And so I think that there still is lots of opportunity. And the proposal that is before us strikes exactly the right balance that then there is no question that you are an independent board operating with support from your local community. And my concern is that this Handy Bus be allowed to continue and support the really vulnerable community members that it has supported for years, that we can continue to do that in a way that's reasoned and affordable at every step of the way. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Did you want to say anything else? I wasn't sure if you're...
No, just thank you, Councillor.
Okay.
I appreciate your comments, and it was a pleasure working with you before.
Thank you for that. I have a question before I go back to Councillor Corbeil for administration. I'm looking at 1.1 of the MOU that's being presented to us, and about halfway through it says the annual funding will be increased by 5% for the second, third, and fourth years of funding. I was under the impression we were looking at the second year only at this time. We weren't looking at third, fourth years as far as that 5% increase?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor, and it's not being compounded. So the first year, the funding is $175,000. For the last 3 years of the contract, it would be $183,750.
Okay, it's just the wording makes it sound like we're going to increase it by 5% in the second year, then again in the third, and then again in the fourth year. Is that the way I'm reading it, or does that make sense?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can see why you're reading that into it. We can just change that to for the second year funding, if you wish.
Thank you. I think that would clear it up. And then, do we need to mention the third and fourth years then, or is that going to still add confusion?
No, that's fine, Mr. Mayor. We can leave it at that because it'll automatically be that new amount from the third and fourth year. That's the intent.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Alice, did you have any comments on that part as far as 5% funding?
Thank you for the opportunity. When we did this, we had it written out that way, and I thought it was being misunderstood from our point of view. And after looking at it, and I understand, you know, budgets are tight, and we've had a discussion, and I believe we would be very happy to leave it at 175 for those 4 years. And I think we want to let you all know that we want to be partners. So budgets are tight. I think we can manage, and we can do other things on our side to assist with other funding And any grant we can get, we can certainly look at that, and we have been. So I would like to put that forward, and we could have that paragraph that Doug was talking about just go so that it's 4 years at 175,000. Is that okay with everybody?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's good to hear. We have to look at this as a partnership. We're in a partnership with the Handy Bus here to provide the service to the community. And I think that's commendable that they've agreed to leave it at 175,000 for the 4 years. And we can have that reworded very easily. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And then just for clarification, Doug, will the rewording be done tonight as far as accepting the, or as far as adopting this MOU?
I couldn't hear that.
We need a motion then to,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would just adopt the agreement as amended.
okay, so you folks are going to be making that amendment for us then?
I can do that right now, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
thank you. And then I'm just circling back to Deputy Mayor Cox as far as the non-voting member. How are we going to deal with that if not all of council is on board as far as that member should be a non-voting member?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that if you feel that it should be a voting member, someone should make a motion that the MOU be amended to show that the member is voting rather than non-voting. And if I could just speak to your first question, Mr. Mayor, if 1.1, we would just remove the second sentence, and that would leave it at $175,000 a year for the 4-year contract.
Perfect, that really cleans it up. And I appreciate the fact that your association is so willing to partner with us and hold that funding in place. And your comments about the economy and budgeting are very much appreciated, because I think we're all in some tight situations now with COVID and everything. So thank you very much for that, Allison. Councillor Sobel, I thought I said, no, okay, then I'll go to Councillor Montgomery, then Councillor Bauer.
Councillor Corbeil had her hand up just before I did.
Okay, Councillor Montgomery, you're okay? Okay, then Councillor Montgomery, then.
I already spoke, they can speak. Sorry. I already spoke once, so they can go ahead. It's fine.
Okay, thank you. So I have Councillor Montgomery and then Councillor Bauer.
Sure. I would like to make a motion that we postpone this issue for decision until the, well, this should actually be brought back for the September 15th Committee of the Whole. So I will move that this be brought back to the September 15th Committee of the Whole for further discussion.
Thank you.
We need to, sorry, go ahead.
What did you say?
I was going to say we need to have kind of a full discussion about the MOU and about what it should look like from our side, I think.
Okay, are there any questions as far as that motion that's on the floor or discussion on the floor after that motion? Councillor Peterson, did you have a comment about the motion?
Yeah, Your Worship, I just don't understand why we wouldn't do it now and deal with it now. If there's things to deal with, we're all familiar with this. I think we should just deal with it now. My concern here is only that the handy bus be allowed to function fully and operate with confidence that they can continue providing the service to the people in our community who so desperately need it and depend on it. And certainly the anxiety that the community is experiencing and articulating around the uncertainty, this will not serve them to wait till September 15th. I think it would be very, very difficult. And if I'm wrong on that, then I certainly accede to the members who are in our council chambers tonight to tell me that I'm wrong in that. If the concern that I'm hearing is not legitimate and that the handy bus can function with confidence without this MOU going forward, then I guess we could suspend it. But otherwise, I would be very, very reluctant to do that, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer, do you have comments on the motion or did you have a question for after? Okay. My question, Councillor Montgomery, about your motion is, are you foreseeing problems with the MOU? Are you not content or satisfied with the MOU that's being presented to us?
Yeah, and I think it's going to take far too long to get into it in this meeting. That's why I'm suggesting that we wait until we can have an actual proper discussion. When council asked administration to create an MOU or to kind of negotiate an MOU, you know, the process I envisioned was where council months ago was going to be able to sit down and discuss what we would like to see as results for the money that we'll be contributing. And so it's surprising to me anyways that the first, you know, glimpse we're getting of it is at the meeting where we're being, you know, told or we're being advised to pass it without basically proper discussion. And like, it's a legal document that, you know, is ostensibly or possibly going to be, you know, standing for 4 years. And I think that we need to have a discussion about numerous parts of the MOU and to speak to Councillor Peterson's point, as the financial, I can attest, and I believe that you know, everyone has the financial information. The handy bus is in no way in jeopardy of not functioning as a result of us waiting a couple months. They have decent reserves that we'll carry them on for probably, you know, a year or two at least. So there's certainly no risk to that as far as us waiting just a month. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think it'd be wise to speak to our association representatives. How do you folks see the situation if there would be a delay on the MOU until the middle of September if a discussion occurred then? You folks are the ones that are most involved in the day-to-day running of the handy bus.
I do have the financials here. I brought a copy for everyone. Do you want me to pass them out for you, or does it matter? I'll give it to Doug. It would be nice to know that we have the funds in place, because what we're trying to do is give a better service to our most vulnerable. As everybody in this room understands, we have clients that are living on $1,300 to $1,700 a month. And to live in town here or in the rural, they're living in poverty. So what we would like to do is do some better planning so that we can not only for the town residents, but for the county residents, and all work together to have stabilized funding for the handy bus. So if we can plan, and because of COVID, it's going to slow us down, but we don't want to be sitting here worrying about, are we funded or not? We want to know we're funded. Then we can move forward with a plan so that we can balance better the cost to all the residents than we're doing now. Because right now, we're really pricing ourselves out of business. And we are dealing with the vulnerable and the ones that, yes, some of them may have money, but the majority of them are living on a pension. So what we want to do is look at a better way of what we've been doing in the past. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I had one follow-up, if you don't mind, and the question is, based on your comments as far as holding the $175,000 funding at that level for the entire 4 years, and based on the idea that we may be looking at adding an amendment as far as our member to be voting, does your association feel satisfied that this is a good MOU for your group? Are you comfortable with this memorandum of understanding?
Because we've done a couple of them, trying to, I'm working with Doug to come back and forth to try and make it a true partnership. I want to see what is in that when we do the adjustment. And if it's what I expect, I think we could move forward. So if you want to let us have a few minutes to do that.
Okay.
And go through it with Doug or whoever, or however you want to handle it, we could then possibly move forward tonight.
Okay, so you're saying that you're satisfied with the MOU that's
The majority, I just want to
majority
make
of it.
sure that that paragraph where we have asked for 175 and then a increase for second, third, and fourth month is that it's taken out, and
Okay.
it's 175 for the 4 years.
Yes, and I think
So-
they're going to take that sentence right out of the MOU.
And if, I don't know how your vote's gone as far as a representative on the board. We have to go back to the board and ask, but I might step out of that and talk with Florence and see what she thinks, because the board was pretty adamant that we want your representation, but we want to make it clean so that we don't lose our status. And then it's not putting that onus on the councillors. And some councillors, you're right, they can separate themselves. There's councillors that can't.
Okay, so I think the only slight sticking point is whether your association would want the council member to be a voting member or a non-voting member.
That's correct.
Okay,
Your worship, if I could. There's a couple reasons why we shouldn't go ahead with it tonight. One of which is there's an item in there that talks about us having to pay the association for the handy bus barn. We don't know the cost of that. So we would essentially be agreeing to something that we don't know the cost of at this point. It would be, I believe, inappropriate or irresponsible to agree to something where we don't actually know what we're getting ourselves into financially. And never mind the fact that any amendments that we make here have to be brought back to the Handy Bus Board to vote on. There's no way for the Handy Bus Association to make decisions on an amended MOU without it being going back to the association. So the proper process would be for us to agree on an MOU with all the information we need, and then for that to go back to the Handy Bus Association for them to review, and if they are happy with it, they can send it back to us. There's no, I believe, there's no proper legal way for us to do what we're doing at this point.
okay, I'm looking at the section that deals with the bus barn. And what are you saying is the problem with that? That it talks about hiring a mutually agreed appraiser to appraise the portion of the bus barn building at the town's expense? And then you would
Yeah,
look.
so we don't know if the appraiser is going to say that's 50,000, 200,000. We just don't know what that's gonna come out at. We don't even we don't even know that all of council wants to pay that amount of money. So that's why I'm proposing that we bring this back to actually properly discuss it and go through this as a council point by point. And then again, there's no deliverables, as far as like measurable deliverables in this. And we need to have an idea of what we expect to see. There's information that I've asked for from the association, regarding the board makeup and other issues. Unfortunately, that didn't come to us in time for this meeting. For all those reasons, not the least of which is, like I said, there's no way for them to agree to an amended MOU on the spot. I believe we have to necessarily move this ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sobel.
I almost forgot what I was going to say. I guess I'm concerned about the fact that there's an allegation that this is not a legal document. I take exception to that. If council votes to agree to this MOU, then it becomes a legal document. I also recognize the fact that the handy bus has been without an agreement with the town for 6 months now, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why that happened and circumstances. But I think it's, you know, if we're going to consider ourselves a partner with the handy bus, and let's start partnering with them. Let's meet them halfway, and I think the very least we can do is agree to this. I don't see anything wrong with this agreement, and I'm ready to support it, and I will not support an adjournment on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Bauer.
Your Worship, my questions were all to do with the memorandum of agreement and not to the current motion on the floor. So I will wait until after we voted. And then if there is something to discuss after, I will bring my points up then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corbeil and then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My issue, I don't like tying up budgets and future councils. You know, this is an election year, and that's, you know, contributing, or I mean, I understand that we should like partner or whatever with the handy bus. I'm not against that, but I'm not going to say that the next council will want to. I don't like taking their freedoms away, and that's something that I've been trying to be quite mindful about. So to I don't know, my thoughts on this were to, you know, even partner with the handy bus, you know, from January to October, and maybe even let a new council do the MOU. I'm not sure how everybody else feels about that, but just a thought.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Legore, and then Councillor Peterson.
To you, Mr. Mayor, the agreement recognizes that future councils will have to approve the funding on an annual basis. Yeah. So that is in the agreement, and it's not uncommon for a municipality to enter in an agreement that extends beyond 1 year. So it goes beyond the term of a council quite often. That's not unusual. In relation to the bus barn, there's no question that there was funding put in place for the bus barn and that there was an agreement between the town and the county to pay the shortfall. There's no formal agreement in place other than a record of the money that was spent on the building. And I think the town needs to recognize that there is a commitment there, that that part of that building belongs to the handy bus. They do pay the utilities on that portion of the building. They don't own the land that it sits on, but they certainly own the premise that sits on the land. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to Mr. Legore and for that elucidation. I just want to say that you know, we've had this agreement, I think, going back long before my tenure on council. I think it goes back to 2009 at least, and the items that are contentious in this, to me, are, you know, if they relate to the barn, I think that CEO Legore has addressed that, and so that the only and the money is the same money that we've been paying for many years, and I think it really speaks well of the handy bus that they have you know, reached out to us in terms of actually reducing that amount and keeping it the same as it's been for many years. And then the final part of that is that having a voting member or not having a voting member on that board, I think it's clear that the delegation today has said that having that Societies Act and the voting membership conflict with each other has been a detriment. And I sit on another board where I used to sit as a council rep and now sit as a community member that was experiencing similar situations regarding governance and operations. So I understand exactly what Mrs. Booth is talking about regarding that. So I really see no reason to delay this. I think it's to the detriment of the people that we're serving, and that we should not lose sight of the fact that there are people who need certainty in this service going forward. And when we talk about the reserves, when former Councillor Rocky Blockland was the representative to the handy bus. I often questioned him about the reserve and why this reserve sat at such a high amount and why it wasn't being instituted to lower the rates of for ridership, and he was well versed in the handy bus business, and he spent a great deal of time telling me something that I really didn't want to hear, but I certainly understood what he told me. It was succinct and it was reasoned. And he said that reserve existed not to subsidize the rides, but to sit there as a protection on the unfunded liability for new vehicles, for replacement vehicles, and for the unfunded liabilities that were accrued by the organization itself. And he went into great detail about that, and he understood it in the fullness. And he certainly convinced me that reserve, that restricted reserve, had a purpose that was well defined by the organization, and it was something that I certainly accepted. So I think that makes it even more important that the $175,000 contributed by the town of Strathmore be assured sooner rather than later. It's been well beyond the time that's expected. None of what's in this MOU can be a surprise to anybody sitting on this council. We know the business of the handy bus, or at least we should. It's been around for a long time. And so I think that there aren't unknowns going forward. There are opinions, and I respect that, but I don't think that there are unknowns, Your Worship. And thank you.
Thank you. We'll go now to Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we're going to go here, then let's go here. In reading the paragraph C, which talks about the bus barn, I understand that we're going to get it appraised, but it says, upon the sale of the premises, the town shall pay the handy bus the appraised value amount within 30 days of the completion of the sale. You're talking about the land. So we need to make that a little bit more clear, because we aren't going to pay them the land value. We're only going to pay them the appraised value of the barn, correct? I don't believe that is clear enough in there. And then again, there's more questions. Has the county made an MOU with the handy bus?
What was that question again?
She's asking if the Wheatland County, have they done an MOU with you, a new MOU with you?
No, they haven't. We have had funding with them this year. If you wish me to speak on that so you can understand a little more of what's going on. We got $10,000 given to us this year through that. In previous years, we had $35,000 coming to the handy bus. We got it up to there when I was on council. And our representatives and some of the people felt, because we had a little bit of reserve, that this is the thing that was really bothering them. And so we were getting told, we don't need any money. You don't give any money to them, or they're rolling in dough.
Can I jump in? So are you saying the Wheatland County councillor who's supposed to act on the behalf of the Handy Bus Association directed his council to fund less? So he wasn't acting in the best interests of the Handy Bus Association?
Yes. In fact, the council was told not to give us the money. That's why, and then they voted to give us less, because, and the way we got some of that money was not because it came from the $175,000. We had set up with the funeral homes that there's a lot of seniors that have used this handy bus for years, and they appreciated it. And so they left us money in their will. So we had a number of 60,000, 40,000, 30,000, and we put that money in the bank. And we had this young lady. And what we did is we were able to do our own investing through the Royal Bank. And so we picked the top 10 banks that wanted to pay us the top interest rate. Up till then, it was costing us to use the banks. With putting that money away, we were able to put another $10,000 into helping pay and subsidize our clients, right? So that's how we got the money. And our councillors, both of them, feel that we're rolling in dough. So don't give them any more money because, you know, and yet we have clients in Wheatland County paying $140 a trip to go for medicals, and they are not going for medicals. And some of them can't drive. So they get a ride to Strathmore and they go from Strathmore in. And sometimes they will be counted as a Strathmore resident, right? So what to feel because we're a society, we shouldn't have any money and we should be dead broke all the time is a fallacy, right? It's not realistic for any organization to be bankrupt, right? And go penny to penny. So you can't do anything in that respect. So my point of view is that money is not about rolling in dough. It's about longevity of the handy bus for our clients, Wheatland County clients, the vulnerable, so that this organization can stay in business for a lot longer. And we've been in business since 1986, okay? So we must have been doing something right. Right?
Yeah, you're
so
right.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
Your Worship, I wasn't finished.
I was coming right back to you.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
So first of all, I didn't mean for anyone to get thrown under any buses as far as councillors in any place, shape, or form. But the other thing that you just brought up, is that you have these reserves, and we talked earlier about the legalities of having the town run the handy bus and that not following the society rules. Is there rules for having reserves within a society?
Any society can have over $800,000 in reserves. And again, the conversation was, when we have to replace a bus, that's cash.
Yep.
And we have a good fleet, but we're coming up, this year we're replacing one. Next year, two, we have a 3-year plan on how we have to keep our vans in good order. So that takes money, right?
These are all great things that we need to hear back from you on after, some next year when you come back to us to report on everything. Those are things, the great things for us to hear. Thank you for answering my questions, and I'll wait to hear what everyone else has to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure who's next. Councillor Corbeil? Nope. Councillor Montgomery?
Councillor Corbeil, did you want to go first?
She shook her head.
Okay. I just have one question, and then I'll ask you to. I'll close debate, I guess. My question is just for Mr. Lagore, and that is: has the town had our lawyer look at this document yet?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't understand the question. Could you repeat, please?
I asked if we have had if the town has had a lawyer look at this document just to ensure that it is worded clearly enough, and essentially, has the town had a lawyer look at this legal document yet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this MOU has not been reviewed by legal counsel.
Thank you. And again, I'll ask you to please call the question. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a request from the mover of the motion after the discussion to call the question. So I will call the question. Do you need to have the the motion read back to you. Councillor Peterson is asking that the motion be read back. Are you able to do that, Deborah?
Yes, Your Worship. Councillor Montgomery, the motion is that council postpone item 5.2, Handy Bus MOU, to the September 15th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Did everyone at home hear that? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed, 5 in favor. So Alice, and I'm sorry, your first name?
It's Florence.
Florence, that's right. Alice and Florence, I don't want you to see this as a warning sign that we're not going to get a functioning, solid MOU between our two groups. I think it's obvious that councillors want to be sure on the wording of the MOU. They want to talk about some of the information that's here, and I think there was a little bit of worry about the sale of the lands as far as the reimbursement for the bus barn building to you.
Can I speak to
Yes.
that? We have no intention of making any claim on the land. This is strictly for the building, and the documents say that. And it's clearly on the document that says that the land belonged to the town. So there is no contentious thing coming from us. All we're requiring is the value of what that building part is, not the land. It's excluded right in those documents.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Your Worship, can I ask one final question, please? Would the association prefer that we bring this, the one that's in the agenda to Committee of the Whole, or should we be bringing the one that they sent yesterday to Committee of the Whole?
Well, Alice, I guess the question is, you're wanting us to bring this one that you've been working on?
I would like the one that I gave to Doug yesterday,
Okay.
and go into that section that I said, which is under obligations on the funding 1.1.1. So the 1.1 says that we're requesting $175,000 for this year from January 1st to December 31st. Now, we have put in there on the 112 is we increased it, so we want that to be taken out, 112, 113, and 114. And in the first paragraph, we would like to have that we receive $175,000 for each year for 4 years. And I would like to see that the wording, the town shall commit to the following 4 annual funding commitments to be paid to the handy bus. That first paragraph 1.1.
Okay, I'm a little confused. You want to bring back an MOU that talks about removing a member of Strathmore Town Council to be a member of the association? You want that removed from an MOU?
Yes, because pardon? What paragraph are you reading from?
1.4, you said to remove 1.4. Town of Strathmore appoints 1 member of council to be a non-voting member to attend a monthly meeting of the Handy Bus Association. You want that removed from an MOU?
I think it's 1.1.4, Mr. Mayor.
1.1.4?
Yes.
1.4.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you. So Alice, I guess, Mr. Legore, if I can just ask then, if this is coming back to the second meeting in September for Committee of the Whole, I believe that's the 8th? Is that correct? September 8th? Is that one where we would have the association come back then as a delegation if we're in Committee of the Whole?
The Committee of the Whole meeting is September 8th, Mr. Mayor, but I believe it's been referred to September 15th in the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Which is the council meeting in September.
Okay.
Yes, pardon me, sorry.
Thank you.
So it'll be coming to council on September 15th.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And again, I don't want you to go away with any concerns. We're still going to look at this. We're still going to consider it, obviously, and come up with the best kind of a working agreement we can between your association and the town of Strathmore.
And thank you, Your Honor, for having us come in and speak.
Thank you.
And I would expect nothing less than the council members want to look at it and make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Okay.
Some of the things that we may be very sticky on, but we tried to be fair. We tried to make it a fair and equitable partnership.
Okay.
So I see where, like, we've already talked about restraints in budgets, and I know Mr. Montgomery made a point about we couldn't approve it with good conscience, just the two of us, but our board has given the mandate to come in. So it could be possible, but I agree. I would like everybody to make sure that they're happy with what we're doing. If we can't come to agreement, well, then what happens, what happens. It will happen.
I don't want you to go away feeling
No,
worried
no.
or concerned.
And I understand that. I'm a business person. I know what, yeah. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Mr. Legore, just a quick question. So when this comes to us for committee of the whole discussion on the MOU, you'll have to then have administration stay in contact with Alice and Florence regarding what we're looking at as far as what we want to see in the MOU, and then it could come back to us again on the 15th?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will continue to communicate with the Handy Bus Association.
Okay, thank you very much. I know you will. You did a great job so far. All right, we have no consent agenda tonight, and at this time, we're on 7.1, adoption of the June 16th, 2021 public hearing minutes.
Your worship, I've had my hand up for a
Oh,
while.
I'm
May I-
sorry. I'm sorry, Councillor Bauer. I thought we had finished. Councillor Bauer.
Before we go on to the next topic, your worship, I'm just wondering if I could please ask Mrs. Booth and Mrs. Vandervelde if I could please submit my questions through our CAO, Mr. Legore, prior to our meeting in September. I have a number of questions. I'd also like to see those financials that you presented today. So I'm asking whether or not those could be put into our agenda package or into our booths, into our boxes. And then I just had a question too. I understand that you did say in the MOU, and I'm not sure if this is prepared by Mr. Legore, but it does say that you will be governed by the newly adopted bylaws. When did you have your last AGM in order to make changes to your bylaws?
We have never held an AGM until this year, and that's coming up. Is that not correct, or am I wrong? No.
Okay, so I have, yeah,
Just a moment.
that, and I'd like to address those concerns through questions, please.
So you're wanting to submit those questions through the CIO to Alice and Florence and the board?
May I have permission to do that, please?
Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would encourage all of council, if you have any questions, submit them to me and I will get them on to the Handy Bus Association. And the financial information that was presented tonight is already in your inbox. If you check your inbox, was forwarded to you by email already. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, and thank you for coming
Thank
back
you.
for that. So we'll any questions that come up, we'll bring them back to you.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
So we're on the adoption of the June 16th, 2021 public hearing minutes. Looking for a motion to adopt.
I would move to adopt those minutes, Your Worship.
Councillor Sobel has a motion to adopt. All in favor? Motion is carried. 7.2, adoption of the July 7th, 2021 public hearing minutes, public hearing minutes. Councillor Corbio?
I move the council adopt the July 7th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. 7.3, adoption of the July 7th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes. Councillor Peterson?
I would so move those minutes, Your Worship.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to adopt the July 7th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes made by Councillor Peterson. All in favor? And the motion is carried. We have no tabled items tonight. Item 9, 9.1, policy number 1808, procurement policy, which is on page 23 of the agenda package. And Mr. Teedy is speaking to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. The procurement policy replaces policy 1901 purchasing policy with a more robust and complete policy around the procurement activity. This policy is to provide for transparency, build trust, and demonstrate commitment to reducing the town environmental impact. The policy provides for best value acquisition, referring to a balance between performance, price, and the useful life of an asset being acquired. The policy needs to be in accord with two other pieces of legislation: the Agreement on Internal Trade, now renamed as Canadian Free Trade Agreement, and the New West Partnership Trade Agreement. Both agreements have a bid protest mechanism that provides suppliers with an independent arbitral process to resolve complaints that a specific procurement by a government entity was not conducted in compliance with the rules of the agreement. On the NWPTA website, the following reference is made concerning local preference policies. The NWPTA does not permit preferential treatment of local suppliers. However, for procurement that does not fall within the parameters of these agreements, local vendors will be given consideration as much as possible. In connection with suppliers challenging the bid process, the town has some history with that. In 2012, the town was challenged on the awarding of the Wildflower Reservoir construction contract. The insurance company for the town defended the action on behalf of the town of Strathmore. AMSC paid more than $120,000 to defend the action. The action was ultimately dismissed, but at a significant cost to our insurers. That concludes my comments. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mel on policy number 1808 and his presentation? Councillor Sowell?
Oh, it's an error, Your Worship, excuse me.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Montgomery, then Councillor Peterson.
Councillor Peterson was ahead of me, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you. So I'm very appreciative of this. My question relates to 2.20, the evaluation criteria in under the definitions. And I was just wondering, when we talk about evaluation criteria, would it ever come in the procurement matrix that we would actually separate those out? So would we have something that would talk about compliance with specifications under environmental consideration?
I've taken a look at the forms that we use. They have not been included to date, but the intention is for administration to include as much as possible the recognition of environmental impact where practical.
So my follow-up, Your Worship, and I cede to the expertise of administration in this. Is there wisdom in moving an amendment for inclusion for that into the procurement matrix when it's, and I know that's a time-consuming undertaking, but would it be worth an amendment to this or a direction to administration?
Environmental, if section 2.18, environmental considerations sustainability has been included in the definitions
Yeah.
already, but we could include it from a practical standpoint through our work processes.
That's exactly what I was asking, Your Worship, and just so that we just, you know, language is very malleable, and so if we can really put some teeth in that and say this is something that that this community is concerned about, this is something that we really are striving toward, I would be most appreciative. I just don't know how to go about ensuring it.
So would maybe a question to Mel and or Mr. Legore, with that being in the policy, the way it's worded, is direction to staff enough that we need to do to focus on that policy section?
One option might be to adopt the policy and direct administration to provide as much as possible language in our work plan and documentation to provide for the recognition of the environmental impacts.
So you have that?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so you're satisfied with that, Councillor Peterson, in the direction?
That would be terrific, because it would allow for evaluative criteria on that matrix, on that standard. And I know that Deborah captured exactly what Mel said, so we have it for a motion. I'm much appreciated.
Great.
Much appreciative.
Thank you. We'll go now to Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Mel, for this. So I guess there's one minor thing on the first page of the under the purpose. The last word says in compliance, and I believe that should be 2 words. And then the other question I had was, so in the appendix, it lists the there's a table there that lists, you know, like when to do what, depending on the value. I was just wondering if it was worth including the mention about, you know, if you're over $100,000, for instance, you know, based on the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, if it was worth listing that in there as well. And then a final question I have is, so as I was reading this, it talks about the procurement of services, and you know, and the handy bus, for instance, is a service that, you know, provides you know, essentially subsidized rides. And I was wondering why the handy bus, or like why we would not have to RFP for something. You know, if we're looking to contract somebody to do essentially subsidized rides for people, why would that not go to an RFP?
Mr. Legore?
To you, Mr. Mayor, it's not a contract, it's a memorandum of understanding where you're providing funding to a nonprofit group. That's why you don't go through a tender. We have a number of those in place. Thank you.
Does that help, Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, I guess like I'm just one. So is it because they're a nonprofit that we don't have to do it, or like I understand, yeah, like, but I don't see how we couldn't do an MOU with any particular, you know, company almost, or is it because they're a nonprofit that? So I'm not clear on what the delineation is, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not a contract. We're not purchasing anything from them. We're providing funding to them for a service that they're providing through their society. Mr. Teedy, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, the town is not providing the service directly. We're a funding source as opposed to purchasing something on a procurement basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Teedy? And I'm looking for a motion. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Worship. That's where I was going. I move that council adopt policy number 1808, procurement
procurement policy as presented? I think we've lost you. Councillor Corbeil, we lost you. Oh, you muted because of children. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for policy number 1808. I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, Councillor Sobel?
I just don't think that motion encompasses Councillor Peterson's concern and request.
That's where I was going to finish with
Okay.
it. I was wondering if there was anything that we needed to add to get Councillor Peterson's request or thoughtfulness in there.
Is administration able to
Wordsmith?
wordsmith that for council?
Direct administration to,
I believe that council adopt policy 1808 procurement policy and direct administration to provide an amendment to provide a work plan for an environmental impact. Close.
does that sound amenable to you? Okay, so we have a motion.
Absolutely.
We have an amended motion on the floor. All in favor? And Councillor Montgomery, are you in favor?
Your worship, we're just voting on the amendment, right? At this point?
Sorry, Councillor Montgomery, have you voted on that motion? I can't tell.
Sorry, my internet connection cut out there for a second. We're talking about, sorry, Councillor Peterson's
Well,
motion or the main
it's
one?
a motion to adopt the policy with the amendment directing administration to deal with that green aspect of selecting successful bidders. Is that worded? Your wording was good.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I did hear that motion, and yes, I do support that. I vote in
Okay.
favor.
Okay, so we're all in favor of that. Thank you. And thank you, Mel. This brings us to 9.2, Strathmore Stampede Booth. Jeff Person, welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So we just want to change how the booth is used this year. There's been a bit of a loose process in past years, but for 2021, we'd like to focus our invitation on frontline workers and associated organizations who help the community get through COVID-19. This would provide meaningful recognition for these workers. In the past, gate admissions have also been included with our sponsorship, have been provided on a first-come basis to staff. And so we'd like to extend that for 2021 as well. It's a brief report that's included with council, but I think that it's complete in terms of what we're trying to get across. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Jeff. Are all the councillors at home and abroad? Are you all comfortable with what you've received as far as the Strathmore Stampede booth usage in 2021? Deputy Mayor Cox.
I am 100% in favor of this. I just wanted to kind of maybe get a glimpse of what they were thinking, because I want to know if we're including Sagewood workers as well as Wheatland housing workers as frontline workers.
Thank you very much, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Cox. We have included we've prepared a list of all the frontline worker organizations in town. We'd be pulling a random sample of those just because with one booth we obviously can't welcome every worker who provided that in town. So we have a randomized sampler that we'd be using to choose which organizations, just so that there's no appearance of favoritism.
Right, but is Sagewood as well as Wheatland housing in that list that you're picking from randomly?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, both Sagewood and the Lodge are included in there.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Are you ready for a motion, Your Worship?
Surely. Councillor Bauer, do you have a question before a motion or discussion? Should we, Councillor Bauer? Do you have a question?
Fine, after the motion.
Okay, Councillor Peterson, do you want to make your motion then?
Yes, Your Worship, I would move that council dedicate the use of the town's sponsored booth at the 2021 Strathmore Stampede for hosting frontline workers and associated organizations through a process coordinated by town event staff.
Thank you for that motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Bauer, did you have a discussion comment or a comment you wanted to make on that motion?
Your Worship, I was just wondering if we could have access to the list of organizations and frontline workers that has been identified by the town event staff. Is it a long list? Can they read it out?
Jeff, will you be providing us an email of your list or?
Thank you, Your Worship. I can absolutely do that, or else the other alternative is that council can forward any recommendations to us as well. We're rapidly approaching the date for the Stampede, and so I just want to make sure that whatever we do, we've got enough time to contact the organizations that are successful and for them to distribute tickets out. So for the sake of expediousness, I think that perhaps council sending in their recommendations might be the faster approach.
Thank you. I can do that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Cox.
Councillor Peterson was ahead of me.
I think it was just for her motion.
Oh,
No, it wasn't?
Your Worship, I just one of the things that I wanted to mention, you know, the goal in this is to raise up and shout out to everyone who's in the booth and not in the booth for their support of getting us through this enormous trial. I was wondering if we could reach out to the Egg Society and through them to the rodeo announcer so that each day those people that are in the booth could be acknowledged, that just those 30 seconds could be taken to acknowledge those service providers each day, and that councillors will still have their own packages to allow them into the ground. So also, you know, really to encourage councillors who are present to pop their head into that booth to recognize and thank those people on behalf of all of us. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Cox. Did you have a comment? No. Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, thank you very much. And actually, I just wanted to say, great idea, Councillor Peterson. Thank you very much for suggesting that. And I just wanted to say thank you to Councillor Bauer as well for coming up with this idea. I think it's a great idea, and unfortunately, we can't honor and kind of reward everybody that is put in such a hard effort over the last year and a bit. But I hope that the people that do get to use this enjoy it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. I don't see any other hands up or discussion points to come, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Jeff. Now, Mr. Legore, as far as the discussion concerning the item arising from in-camera, is that going to be done under urgent business?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you can deal with it right now under 9.3 of the agenda. It's business arising from the in-camera session on the rebranding initiative.
Okay.
Council can put the motion forward, and then if they want to have debate on it, they can have debate. But you should put the motion on the floor first.
Okay, thank you. So as far as the rebranding then, if someone is prepared to put a motion forward concerning that, then we can have discussion on the aspects of the branding that are brought forward. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. I can maybe try and do one. I move that council rebrand title Rural Reimagined with the Small Town Big Connections logo. if that makes sense.
It does to me. Jeff is nodding his head. Do all councillors understand the motion that's being put forward by Councillor Corbeil? I see nodding.
May I?
Yes, you can
May I-
speak to your motion.
Thank you, Worship. Again, I want to thank all of the community members and Jeff, team, everybody for bringing all of this forward. I know there might be some hesitation on the rebranding, pushing it, but you know, I like it. It rolls off the tongue. I love the logo. You know, just because this is a brand doesn't mean that we have to just strictly go with this. With advertising, you can go into your different venues with your branding, different like marketing and stuff like that. You can bring everything that's been brought forward in under this what is it, Rural Reimagined, I believe. You know, I think it's broad enough. I really think that this can be a really good thing for Strathmore. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Any other comments from councillors? Then at this point, I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. And Jeff, thanks to you and your staff, Scott, all of you folks for all the work you've done since February. And it's exciting as we move forward with the new RAND.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Council.
That brings us to 9 point whatever, petition motor vehicle noise complaint, which is on page 62 of your exciting agenda.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Administration has received a petition regarding motor vehicle noise on Park Lane Drive. Under the Municipal Government Act, the CAO is required to report to Council within 45 days from the date of receipt of the petition regarding whether it is sufficient. The Act is very clear about the parameters that must be met in order for the petition to be deemed sufficient. These parameters are set out in the report that is before you. In this case, the petition is not sufficient. Regardless of the fact the petition does not meet the sufficiency requirements in the Act, administration does recommend arranging for municipal enforcement to work with the group surrounding noise concerns, as that would be the appropriate process to deal with this concern moving forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Kara. Any questions for Kara, Councillor Corbeil?
I don't have a question, but I can do a motion.
Surely.
I move the council accept the petition regarding.
Sorry, Councillor Corbeil, I do have one question first from Councillor Sobel.
You bet.
I still can't get my mic on, no matter where I go. I just wanted to apologize for interrupting. This might have an effect on the motion, that's why. So the question is, we've got the motion appropriately sending this over to municipal enforcement. Is there some reason why we're not including the RCMP in this direction? Or would that be?
I mean, I guess like in terms of noise is regulated under our bylaws.
Absolutely,
right?
and the RCMP
and so I guess like for me, the first point of an internal reference would be to refer it to municipal enforcement, but I will maybe let Mark speak to whether RCMP should come in as well.
Through the chair, Councillor Sobel, I've already been in contact with the RCMP regarding this petition. Through their enhanced road safety program, they've issued 7 violations from January of this year to July. Unfortunately, none of those have been associated with the time complaints or the time frame on Park Lane Drive. Members have attended and patrolled the area. The complainant didn't get any plates or direction of travel, and the vehicle was not found. Working alongside municipal enforcement and the RCMP, we'll continue to provide regular patrols of the area in an attempt to address this, and we'll be working with, as Ms. Rusk indicated, we'll be working with the members of the petition here to see if we can help them with their issues.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. So you were going to start a motion, Councillor Corbeil, and I'll let you go ahead, but if you are willing to add RCMP in there, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it makes it a stronger motion and puts that direction on paper.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Corbeil, are you prepared to make your motion now?
You bet I am. I move that council accept the petition regarding a motor vehicle noise complaint for information, and that council direct administration to arrange for municipal enforcement and the RCMP to work with this group surrounding the noise concern.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Mark. That brings us to 9.4, Township Road 244 renaming. And Scott Garnett, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Thanks for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. This is the first time I've been able to chat with you guys. My name's Scott. I'm the marketing coordinator with the town of Strathmore. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Our team is constantly trying to find low-cost, high-value initiatives that we can provide the town and our partners. I provided a bit more information in the agenda that we've handed out to you, but the one that I have the privilege of presenting today is one that will help dedicate and celebrate the continued growth of the Agricultural Society. I'm here to recommend that the council rename the section of Township Road 244, or Slaughterhouse Road, or North Boundary Road, however it's been referred to in the past, as Stampede Drive, in honor of Strathmore Stampede and the Strathmore Agricultural Society's contributions to our community. Giving it that clear identity is something that we've been chatting about doing, and something that we're really excited to present to you. Recognizing the Strathmore Agricultural Society as a valued stakeholder has been a priority for council, and this road renaming reflects an important part of our community's culture and history. So to you, Chair, that's my recommendation today.
Thank you for that, Scott. Are there any questions for Scott first? Deputy Mayor Cox, and then Councillor Montgomery.
Just want to, he answered my question. Thank you very much, Scott. Nice to meet you from afar.
Yeah.
I was going to ask exactly what road that is. I'm born and raised here, and as soon as you said Slaughterhouse Road, I'm like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much. And I can make that motion when we're ready.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Montgomery, do you have a question?
No, I don't. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. So Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council rename the section of Township Road 244 from Wheatland Trail to George Freeman Trail, Stampede Drive, in honor of the Strathmore Stampede and the Strathmore Agricultural Society's contributions to our community.
Thank you for that motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. And Kara, if I could just tell you that Councillor Bauer has had to leave the meeting. She is in a great deal of pain with her recent knee surgery. So if you can make note of the time of departure. And that brings us to, 9.5 EMS deals with the independent review.
So good evening again, Your Worship and members of Council. As you're aware, Council has been receiving feedback from residents regarding extensive wait times for ambulatory services, ranging from 5 to 11 hours. This lack of access to timely critical care has the ability to result in the loss of life and/or to severely affect patient outcomes depending on the situation. One of Council's key roles is to advocate for the well-being of their residents to the government and other advocacy bodies. Given Council's advocacy role, administration is recommending that Council authorize the Mayor to sign a letter to the Minister of Health requesting an independent review of the allocation of emergency medical services in the Calgary region, including surrounding areas, for the purposes of ensuring that adequate patient care is provided. In addition, administration is recommending the council leverage its membership with the AUMA by supporting a request that has been for an emergent resolution that has been prepared by the City of Red Deer and seconded by the Town of McGrath, as this resolution aligns with this request for an independent review, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Kara. Councillor Sobel? Okay. Any questions for Kara? Then is someone prepared to make a motion and then we can have discussion?
I am, Your Worship.
Councillor Sobel?
Just a question to administration first. Do you want those as separate motions, Kara? I would move that council authorize the mayor to sign a letter to the Minister of Health requesting an independent review of the allocation of emergency medical services in the Calgary region, including surrounding areas for the purposes of ensuring that adequate patient care is provided, and that council formally support Red Deer and McGrath's request for an emergency resolution regarding an independent review of Alberta Health Services emergency ambulance dispatch, and further that council direct administration to notify AUMA, Red Deer, and McGrath of the town of Strathmore's support for this emergent resolution. And I have comments, Your Worship.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion from council?
May I speak to the motion?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Your Worship, this motion arises as a result of information that a number of people have shared with me over the last few days, ever since a local resident sent an email to MLA Leela Ahir and yourself on July 14th. You in turn shared the email with members of this council, and I thank you for that. The resident spoke of attending the Strathmore Hospital in distress. He was diagnosed with appendicitis and required to travel to Calgary by ambulance for diagnosis, confirmation, and surgery. The ambulance was ordered at 10 p.m. and did not arrive until 6:30 a.m. the next day. Considering the fact that the Strathmore Hospital does not possess surgery capability, complications that might have arisen could have very well been life-threatening. In his conversations with hospital staff, this resident was advised that wait times for an ambulance are routinely 5 to 6 hours and up to 11 hours. The issue appears to arise when a Strathmore ambulance transports someone into Calgary and then gets repeatedly used by Central Dispatch System for further calls in Calgary, or when ambulance staff are required to remain with the patient in the emergency ward until situations where they're, in the emergency ward until the patient is handed over to hospital staff. This has resulted in situations where there are no ambulances available in the town of Strathmore, allegedly for substantial periods of time. I happen to be acquainted with the resident in question and made contact with him. He provided permission for me to print his email on my councillor Facebook page. It's apparent that this is a topic of much concern and interest by the public, as the post resulted in being shared over 270 times and his email viewed by over 17,000 people. I can assure you that these numbers are not normal for my regular Facebook posts. It also generated some private comments to me from AHS employees who provided their names but requested anonymity due to a gag order that they must sign and abide by. Nevertheless, I was advised of the following. EMS Services is currently experiencing never-seen-before call volumes, that Calgary does not have sufficient ambulance resources and therefore regularly needs assistance from rural municipalities, that there are many hours in each day when there are no ambulances in the town of Strathmore due to their need elsewhere in southern Alberta, that backup ambulances are summoned from anywhere in the province if no local sources are available, and that includes locations as far as Fort McMurray being dispatched to Calgary. More incidents of people in distress are choosing to use their own transportation to go to the hospital rather than wait for an ambulance. That ambulances are regularly utilized and dispatched in non-emergent situations, such as transporting a patient with a broken thumb to Calgary Hospital on a doctor's order. That ambulance crews are regularly required to remain with their patient in the hospital emergency area until the patient is admitted, a task that appears to be taking longer and longer to accomplish. And that a number of municipality fire departments, for instance, Airdrie, Canmore, Okotoks, Chestermere, Cochrane, and Strathmore, all provide emergency medical assistance with trained personnel, and that this function can result in being over 50% of their total calls for the year. Your Worship, it's imperative that it be acknowledged and understood that these comments are not designed to reflect negatively on any AHS employees, and I include all those in dispatch offices. I consistently hear and firmly believe that these men and women are extremely busy and continue to sacrifice much in order to provide the best possible emergency service to the residents of this province. I also firmly believe that they are as frustrated about the state of our ambulance service as I am, but are powerless to change anything due to an AHS-imposed gag order. It had been my intention to put forth a motion for council's consideration to have an emergency resolution presented at this fall's AUMA, calling for them to advocate for an independent review. This should focus on the lack of ambulance access in small communities, which exists because of a need for more resources, the centralization of the EMS dispatch system, and a number of other issues. On Monday, I was informed that the City of Red Deer and the town of McGrath had already submitted a motion in regards to this issue, which will come to the AUMA convention in the fall. That motion reads that the AUMA advocate to the Government of Alberta and the Minister of Health to undertake an independent third-party review of the AHS Emergency Ambulance Service System and to investigate the increase in response times and the technical outages that have occurred since January 12, 2021. As such, I feel there are still other steps that we as a council can and should take, and I thank administration for bringing the proposed motion to us, a motion that I'm happy to support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sobel. Are there any other points from councillors? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. That brings us to item 10, committee reports. Are there any tonight? Seeing none, we can carry on to the next one. Items directly related to council, I don't believe we have anything, which brings us to bylaws number 12. 12.1, bylaw number 21-20, business licensing bylaw, and it's just a motion for first reading. Councillor Pearson, you've moved up. I don't know why I was going to call you Councillor Pearson, but welcome back, Jeff.
If you're handing out promotions, I'll take them, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. So I'm bringing this bylaw to council tonight for first reading. I'm really proud of the work that's been included here. We formed a working group that went across the finance, planning, and economic development departments, and we found some really innovative and made in Strathmore solutions to our business licensing. We completed a scan of 30 different communities, and it revealed that Strathmore is already very competitive for business license fees. We are in the very lowest tier of fees, and in our recommendation, lowering them further would not actually likely result in any meaningful increase in business activity. And instead, we focused on the tiered pricing, which is the original idea from Councillor Montgomery, and as well as some other additional innovative ideas that we came up with. The highlights for me in this updated bylaw is the first one is a preferential pricing in our non-residential fees, where our neighbors in Siksika Nation and Wheatland County would pay a reduced fee compared to businesses based further from Strathmore. So right now we've got a two-tiered fee for residential businesses based in Strathmore, and then everyone else pays one set fee. This would be a tiered approach where our resident businesses would pay the lowest fee, and then our neighbors in Wheatland County and Siksika Nation would pay a slightly higher fee, and then businesses based further abroad would pay a higher fee from that. We've categorized restaurants into a drive-through or a no drive-through category system. Retail enterprises are grouped into 3 tiers based on square footage. The provincial government has encouraged the reduction of red tape, and so we've very much simplified the contractor fee process. The age limit for zero-fee youth businesses has been raised to 25 years. A 6-month waiver for business license fees for new businesses is introduced. And something that is very unique to Strathmore is that businesses that have been in continuous operation in the small retail category for at least 25 years may apply for a fee waiver in recognition of their achievement. Including the preferential pricing for an Indigenous reservation is really unique as well. That's something that we didn't discover anywhere else, as well as the distinction for restaurants. This is it's a very sustainable bylaw. It's something that provides a needed update. It previously hadn't been updated in 13 years. And like I said, I'm really proud of the work that we collaborated on here. So thank you very much, Council.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions for Jeff? Oh, Councillor Montgomery?
Mr. Mayor, there's no questions or debate at first
okay,
reading.
thank you. So, Councillor Montgomery, are you bringing forth a motion for first reading?
I am indeed, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I will move that council give first reading to bylaw number 21-20, business licensing bylaw.
Thank you for that motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you again, Jeff. Which brings us to 12.2, bylaw number 20-15, prohibited business bylaw conversion therapy, which is on page 119 of your agenda package.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We postponed this item from June to reflect the federal government's action on similar federal legislation, and that even though Bill C6 passed through the House, it was sent to committee in the Senate after it passed its second reading there. There is growing speculation about an upcoming federal election, so in that case, at this point, Bill C6 would die in the order paper. And so just passing this bylaw would help to protect a vulnerable population in our community. And it would also add to the impetus for any successive government to take similar action on a federal level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there questions for Jeff first? Deputy Mayor Cox?
Thank you, Your Worship. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but we talked about a couple of amendments. The one that stands out, or the couple that stand out to me, was with respect to the landowner being responsible, as in a rental property, and they don't have any idea what's going on in their facility or their house. And then the other one was the next one, which talked about corporations being liable and their employees. I'm just not sure that we could impose that kind of fine or anything on an employee of a corporation. So those are the two that stood out to me the most. And then I also wanted to just make the comment that I'm not fond of the wording, but I did see the email that you sent out to us that listed all of the places, and I really like the way the city of Lethbridge set it out, but it could be too late for that. But those are my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And apologies, this actually was my first time with a bylaw, and I think that there were a couple of steps there that I had actually missed after the committee of the whole. So after we reviewed that meeting, I should have actually provided a bit more sought a bit more guidance from council on which amendments they wanted included in the successive versions. So that was my fault, and I apologize for that. The amendments that I captured in the document there haven't been included in the bylaw, and at this point, any amendments would be able to be made to the bylaw. Correct? Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I sent a number of amendments to council for review and discussion and decision, I guess. And so I'm wondering, just procedurally, are we supposed to move second reading and then suggest amendments, or how does that work?
Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you should put second reading on the floor and then proceed with your amendments.
Thank you for that direction. Councillor Montgomery, do you want to put a motion for second reading?
Sure. I will move the council give second reading to bylaw number 20-15, prohibited business bylaw.
Thank you for that motion. And I guess you can speak to your motion and then we can have further discussion on it.
Thanks. I just have to disappear here so I can look at my email. Okay, so I would like to, I'm going to start with the definition of what we're proposing to be the definition of conversion therapy. And the reason for that is because some of my other amendments, let's say, are either necessitated or not by the definition that we choose. And so as council, most of council probably received some communications from a resident or a citizen And they had consulted a lawyer, and the lawyer had given some feedback on the definitions and whatnot and various other parts of it. And my understanding of some of the issues with the definition, for instance, is that where it says, oh, sorry. So where we talk about to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior, so I've been, through discussion, I've kind of come to agree, let's say, that if we prohibit the reduction or repression of non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior, what that can do is that can actually end up discriminating against the LGBT, essentially. And the reason for that is because it would basically prohibit people who are LGBT from being able to receive counseling, for example, in order to deal with what they might feel is problematic sexual behavior. So we heard from a woman at one of our council meetings who talked about how, due to a traumatic event, she had sought counseling for what she identified as problematic sexual behavior, essentially. And because, and I guess to be blunt, it had to do with same-sex sexual behavior. And she sought help to reduce, and I guess as a result of this traumatic experience, she was doing something that she felt was unhealthy for herself. And so if we prohibit the repression, if we prohibit any sort of repression or reduction of non-heterosexual sexual behavior, we essentially are discriminating against LGBT people who might want to seek help to, control what they deem as problematic behavior, essentially. And so somebody who is heterosexual, for instance, could go and get, counseling, and they could say, anyways, they identified problematic, sexual behavior. And if they're heterosexual, they're more than fine to go get, treatment, and somebody can counsel them and say, hey, yeah, maybe you should, that might be unhealthy. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that. However, if they're LGBT, then the counselor legally would not be allowed to tell that person, hey, you should maybe cut that out, or that's not healthy. And so that's why I proposed a few different options, basically where it would change the wording so that we weren't capturing, sexual behavior in there. Again, because it would cause problems for people that are legitimately looking for help to get control of their sexual behavior. And we should have it equal for people that are heterosexual and non-heterosexual as well, as in the interest of fairness. And so I guess I can propose an amendment, if that's how we should go about this. And I guess I could ask Mr. Legore if I have 3 different options, let's say, for this. Do I move them all separately, or how should that work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you should deal with each amendment separately.
Okay. So the first, I guess I'll move option 1, which is to add a part that refers to, basically it would make it so that, well, so I'll move this, I guess. Sorry. I'll move that we amend the definition of conversion therapy, sorry, to read, Conversion therapy means a practice, treatment, or service designed to change, repress, or discourage a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, or to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior as part of an effort to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. For greater certainty, this definition does not include a practice, treatment, or service that relates to a person's social, medical, or legal gender transition, or B, to a person's non-judgmental exploration and acceptance of their identity or development. Basically, what this would do is it would make it so that a person could seek counseling, and as long as that counseling was not part of an effort to change the person's sexual orientation or gender identity, then they should be able to, it would allow them to get that whatever help they feel they might need. Thank you.
I'm a little confused because if you're trying to change a person's sexual orientation, aren't you repressing it? I'm a little confused as far as your wording, what you're looking for there.
So basically, it's saying that it would have to be part of an effort to change somebody's sexuality or their gender identity. So if you're not trying to change their sexuality, like, so essentially, you know, if somebody who is LGBT goes and they, like this woman, for instance, you know, who sought help for what she described or what she felt was problematic behavior, she could seek counseling as long as the person was not straying into saying, hey, you know, you shouldn't be gay. They're just saying, yeah, you know, maybe some of the behavior you're engaging in is problematic and you should reduce that. So that would be okay as long as they weren't trying to convince her to not be gay, for instance, or not be LGBT.
Okay, Jeff?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Montgomery, I actually have one suggestion to that, and that's that that we change a comma to a semicolon. It's that that conversion therapy means a practice, treatment, or service designed to change, repress, or discourage a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, semicolon, or to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior as part of an effort to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. I think that way it's, as opposed to it being like one long list, it breaks it up into the two connected concepts.
Okay, and so you're basically saying the same thing I am then, that it'd be fine to include that part.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Yes, I think that there's no problem with that. I think option one is a fine choice.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and I'll leave it at that then.
Okay, so we're going to be voting on each option.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. You vote
Okay.
on this amendment, and then you proceed with the next amendment, and then you finalize your second reading as amended when we're done. Thank you.
It's gonna be a tough one. Okay, Councillor Peterson, do you have discussion on that option as an amendment? Councillor Peterson?
Yes. Thank you, Your Worship. So, first of all, my understanding is that if option one passes, then we will have a definition and we wouldn't go to option 2 or 3. That is my understanding. And so on that understanding, I just want to say that I am in favor of option 1, and the underlying portion speaks to an action that does help add some elucidation to the definition. And I'm appreciative of Councillor Montgomery bringing it forward, and very appreciative of Mr. Jonathan Taylor, who dedicated a great deal of time and expertise to bringing all of these amendments and options to us. I am in favor of this option, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this option? Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in favor of what Councillor Montgomery is proposing. I'm just wondering, again, I kind of mentioned the city of Lethbridge, and I'm just wondering, Councillor Montgomery, if you had a chance to look at it, because I believe it actually is saying what you want to say, but it's actually really nice and clear. Can I read it? Would that help? So The City of Lethbridge's definition says, no person may engage in or operate a business that provides the offering or provision of counseling or behavior modification techniques, administration or prescription of medication or any other purported treatment, service, or tactic used for the objective of changing a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, gender preference, or eliminating or reducing sexual attraction or sexual behavior between persons of the same sex, not including services that provide acceptance, support, or understanding of a person or that facilitate a person's coping, social support, or identity exploration or development, or gender affirming surgery, or any service related to gender affirming surgery. I believe it says exactly what you're trying to say in a less convoluted way, and it's very easy to read. Just a thought.
So then if you defeated that option, you would have to decide if you're going to be bringing forward Lethbridge's definition as an option then. Councillor Sobel and then Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you. You know, Your Worship, I don't know if this is the stage where we start looking to rebuild our bylaw. We have one, not only do we have the bylaw in front of us with second reading, but we have an amendment to that bylaw. I mean, everybody's entitled to amend, and if there is to be an amendment to change the wording to Lethbridge's, then so be it. But let's make it an amendment. Let's please move on with this. This is just about 2 years old now.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was kind of going to say the same thing. I liked Lethbridge, like I like hearing what Councillor Cox had said. Like I don't mind Lethbridge, but I'm not prepared to just jump ship. You know, we've gone through pretty extensive conversations about this one. This is the one that I read in my package, and I would want more time, and I don't think that we have more time to look at Lethbridge. It's just too bad we waited. Yeah, that we didn't bring it forward before.
Your
Thanks.
Worship,
Deputy
Your
Mayor.
Worship, I'm not suggesting we go with Lethbridge's bylaw. I'm suggesting we use the definition from Lethbridge.
I think the problem is that really may cause a lot of delay, and people may have to study it more, and I'm not sure if they're prepared to just drop this option to possibly replace it with an entirely different one that we're just hearing for the first time tonight. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. Yeah, like as Councillor Corbeil said, I would need kind of more time to parse that properly, I think. Whereas like I feel, you know, as it's not like obviously the cleanest wording, but I believe that the amendment I've offered does kind of offer a clear kind of idea of what the intent is anyways. Thank you.
Jeff, if I can turn to you, you've done a lot of work on this bylaw that's coming to us. Are you comfortable with option one?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yes, I think that option one, it's a good addition to that definition. I think that it helps to define it a bit better, and I think that this is one that I would definitely support.
Thank you. So is there any other discussion from councillors on that option one amendment? We're voting to accept this as an amendment to the bylaw that's coming to us tonight. Seeing none, I'll call the vote on this amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that amendment option has passed. So we move on to option two. Councillor Montgomery, is that what you're going to speak to now?
No, like as I said, I wanted any one of those. Basically, to me, they all kind of do the same thing. But this is a way. So, but yeah, since we've kind of passed that, then we don't need to worry about the other optional definitions.
Okay, thank you.
And if nobody else has any other amendments, I wouldn't mind just proposing a couple other ones, please. So I guess I'll start with that. I'll move that council direct administration to remove the word calling from the definition of business in section 2.1A of the prohibited business bylaw. And I remember Mr. Person, he said, that this is just from kind of, I believe, a provincial document, essentially, this definition. The reason why I'm proposing it is because I should say, there was, as I said, this particular lawyer indicated that it could be construed to include parenting or parents, as parenting could be a calling, essentially. And I know that's not our intent, or at least I believe that's not our intent to capture, like conversations parents might have, with their kids, for instance. So that's why I'm proposing, and I don't believe it'll weaken the intent or to kind of, confuse people as to what we're intending here if we remove it. Thank you very much.
Just a question for you, Councillor Montgomery. When we're looking at the word calling, it would be in the definition of business, but if a parent is doing that and is called to be a parent, or is viewing that his or her parenting as a calling, how does that then tie into the business part of the prohibited business bylaw?
Sorry, let me just take a look over here for a second. Well, just because as we define, if we define a business and we include the word calling, even though obviously parenting isn't really a business, if we include that in the definition of business, it could be possibly construed to include parenting, is my understanding. And while that's probably not likely, it's just the fact that a lawyer has kind of raised it as a possible way it could be interpreted, that it sounds problematic to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Jeff and then to Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. In essence, there are two definitions of business. There's the definition in 2.1, and that's how it's used in the rest of the document. For the purposes of prosecution, I would encourage Councillor Montgomery to look at section 4.1, and that's the actual definition of how a prosecution would take place. And so it says that in a prosecution for a contravention of this bylaw, proof of one transaction in the business or that the business has been advertised is sufficient to establish that a person is engaged in or operates the business. So in that sense, a parent who hasn't, if a parent took payment from their child to be a parent, or if the parent was advertising professional parenting skills or something like that, that sounds ridiculous. But that's how this would be. That's how the bylaw would prosecute it. So without that proof of a transaction or advertisement, then in the eyes of the bylaw, a business transaction hasn't taken place. So, and Councillor Montgomery, you are correct. This is from the Municipal Government Act. That's where the definition came from.
So Jeff, if I can simplify for a person like me, are you comfortable with the word calling staying in the business, staying in that part of the business of the bylaw?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would encourage council to keep it in there just for the sake of consistency. I think that especially because this has come from the Municipal Government Act, which is a very old act. There's a lot of case law behind that. But at the same time, I don't think that this is the make or break moment for this bylaw. So if council feels that taking calling out will improve this for the residents of the community, then I don't think that it's going to affect the material nature of the bylaw.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So, Councillor Corbeil, I think you had, okay. Councillor Montgomery, did you put that motion on the floor? You did, okay. So is there is there discussion on that motion? I know I asked you the question about it. Then I'll call, oh, Councillor Sobel, you're on there? Sorry, Councillor Sobel. I'm still learning this system. I'm so busy looking at hands on the
That's
screen.
okay, me too. Yeah, Your Worship, I just wanted to comment that I think we're getting into some really, really fine detail here, and especially in regards to the word calling. And I don't see anything here, nothing in this bylaw that prohibits a parent speaking to their child about sexual orientation. It becomes different when there is as Jeff just mentioned, almost a business transaction, or it gets to the point where their harm is being done to the child because of the actions of the parent. But that's these are not occasions we're going to be looking at, and calling does represent the business world, and one part of it anyway. So I'm not comfortable with removing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I actually, my question was answered by Mr. Persons. And if this is taken under the MGA, like, it does have some backbone to it. I really don't think that this is going to make or break the bylaw regardless. I think these are minor details in my view. And I think consistency is something that we really should look at. I don't think it really hurts the bylaw to have it in. I really did appreciate, though, going to 5.1 and kind of tying it together. I really appreciated that, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question then. The motion on the floor is from Councillor Montgomery. I think you're all aware of what it was. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? So that option is, or that amendment is defeated. And then Councillor Montgomery, did you want to go on to your next one?
I do, and I just want to thank council for their time. And as I said, since we've kind of cleaned up the definition a bit to make it a bit more specific, I feel a lot more comfortable with this. So let's see here. Okay, and I guess I'll. Sorry.
Did you want to put that motion on the floor about the Psychological Association and the College of Alberta Psychologists?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I will move the council direct administration to remove the mention of the Canadian Psychological Association and the College of Alberta Psychologists from the whereas portion of the prohibited business bylaw. And I certainly understand, like, why it's in there. I just, let's say the logical argument part of me, as I mentioned at the previous meeting, since we essentially have, not the same definition as these organizations, to me anyways, it's somewhat logically fallacious to kind of tie them together. And so for that reason, I think it's just kind of cleaner because we're not, like if as I'll remake the argument, I guess, if we say, this group here, this professional organization is against conversion therapy, and then later we define what conversion therapy is, but if ours is different from those professional organizations, it's kind of muddying things, let's say, or it's kind of, it may be an appeal to authority, for instance, if you want, kind of a logical fallacy. And so for that reason, that's why I'm suggesting that it be removed. I understand why it's there. I just, as I said, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
Your Worship, I'd love to hear from Mr. Persons on this as well. But I just, it's my belief that the reason that it's included, and it should be included, is because many of these issues deal with psychologists and they are the resident experts on the cause that this is done, and for them to take the step of opposing this type of conversion therapy, I think it's substantial, and it belongs in a bylaw to explain why, to support the position that we take that it should be outlawed. The Canadian Psychological Association's policy statement on conversion reparative therapy for sexual orientation, and I'll only read the first line. It says, the Canadian Psychological Association opposes any therapy with the goal of repairing or converting an individual's sexual orientation, regardless of age. And the College of Alberta Psychologists, in their standards of practice for 2019, under section 5.3, says the psychologist shall not, in the course of providing a professional service, provide any treatment, counseling, or behavior modification technique with the objective of changing or modifying the sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression of any individual. So I really don't think, after reading those two statements, that it matters what kind of a definition we use for conversion therapy. These people are against it, and I think it should belong and stay in the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think the real question for me would be, is leaving it in, would that then somehow weaken the position of our definition? And I don't believe that it in any way does that. I think that it's simply an academic exercise that says credible individuals and credible professions have given an opinion in a stated form. So unless an expert in this area, like Mr. Person, tells me that there is now a contravention between what they have said and our definition, I am content to leave it there. Thank you.
And I'd like to turn to Jeff now for comments from you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Councillor Sobel definitely hit the nail on the head there, that the statement that begins the Canadian Psychological Association definition that's in here, like that's from their policy statement, and that's the same that's the case for the Canadian Psychiatric Association. In both cases, they preface their definition by saying that they oppose anything like this. So like, and that's the sentence that the Councillor Sobel read, like that's exactly it. So I think that's a very clear indication that regardless of how we define conversion therapy, that they oppose that practice. And I think that is significant to the bylaw, exactly as Councillor Peterson has described, that these are the experts in the field say that this is damaging to people who go through this, and that is one of the supporting clauses for the basis of this bylaw. So yes, thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. And I would feel a lot of angst or misgivings about removing these associations and their comments regarding this. So I think anything that would do any kind of a weakness to our bylaw, and I believe this is one that it helps to have those statements there, I would not be in favor of supporting that. Are there any more comments? Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, I just want to say I don't disagree with what anybody's saying here. As I said, I'm just kind of, for me, it was it's logical consistency kind of thing. Since we've changed the definition to be more in line, I believe, with what the intent of those organizations is, I actually don't have any issue with this not passing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor of Councillor Montgomery's motion on the floor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Sobel. All in favor of the motion on the floor? Opposed? Thank you. And so we'll go on to the next one, Councillor Montgomery.
Councillor Montgomery, you're on mute.
Thank you very much.
This is the one that deals with clause 5.2.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm actually like I said, my main concern, like these other parts of the amendments, these other amendments I proposed was in case we didn't actually change the definition. I wanted to make sure we weren't capturing things or activities that we didn't intend to or we don't want to. And so actually, I'm going to let it stand as is. And if somebody else has any amendments they'd like to offer, I'm
So just to clarify, are you wanting your last three amendments, or sorry, your last two amendments to stand, or are you withdrawing them?
I won't be putting them forward actually, since, as I said, the definition for me was kind of the main thing. And I think that we've kind of clarified what our intent is to the point where I don't think it's as big of a concern for these other amendments.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox?
So I understand where Councillor Montgomery's coming from, but I do have a concern with 5.2 being that the owner of some real property can be prosecuted by proof of one transaction in a business that's conducted on his property. I mean, you have a rental property, you're not there daily, you don't know what's happening. Somebody reports somebody for doing that. It only has to be once, and this owner of this property is fined for $10,000. It could be in the house. And I mean, there is no way of an owner of a rental property to know whether or not one transaction has happened in their place of business or in their home that they've rented out. I find it very hard to prosecute somebody for being naive, not attending their rental property every single day to see what's happening there.
Jeff, would you like to weigh in on that one? How is this going in other municipalities as far as this the owner of a potential property?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This is a clause that's included in similar legislation. It's also a clause that's included in similar bylaws within our own bylaws. And I think that this is where we have to, I think about the entirety of law. That it's not about crafting a perfect law here, because how it's prosecuted and how it's adjudicated is just as important. So if you think of the sale of a fraudulent item, if the owner of a business has done all of their due diligence to make sure that their suppliers are providing genuine products, and if they can demonstrate if a ticket is brought against them that they're selling a fraudulent item, but if they can demonstrate that they have gone through all of the right processes to ensure that that's genuine, and just by virtue of someone really trying hard to get that fraudulent item in there, or a mistake in their supply chain, or something else like that, it's very common for that ticket to be thrown out because law and our justice system understands the intent behind actions. So that's why with something like this, what are the actions that a landlord would take to ensure that they have made it clear to their tenants that this is not a permitted activity? I think that's the security for landlords in Strathmore with something like this. How are you taking action to prevent this in your property? It's not necessary for them to be there 24/7. It's necessary for them to educate their tenants to make sure that they know that this is a bylaw that exists and that will be enforced in the community.
And it also allows, our system has also allowed discretion by the bylaw officers as well for this. Deputy Mayor Cox, if you feel strong enough about this one, you could, since Councillor Montgomery is not bringing it forward as amendment, you could put it on the floor and then we could vote on it as well.
Okay, so my comments, I get what you're saying, Jeff, and me of all people, I work in the legal field every single day. So I get what you're saying. And I do understand that a lot of our bylaws do reference this, but a lot of our bylaws aren't imposing a fine of $10,000 and a year in prison for a single offense. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, I
How does
think,
everyone else feel? Like, is everyone else comfortable with that?
well, I think for us to discuss this, we actually need to put it in a motion on the floor. Since Councillor Montgomery has withdrawn it, if we want to discuss it, we should put a motion on the floor. Councillor Peterson, do you want to put the motion on the floor?
No, Your Worship, but I think but now we're back, now that we've dealt with the amendments, I think we're back to discussing second reading. So I think we could ask questions and have discussion on this, if I stand to be corrected. So I have a question for Jeff around, for Mr. Person around 5.2. If I were allowed to ask it under the motion on the second reading.
We do have a motion on the floor for second reading, but then we've had discussion on that motion and brought forth some of these amendments. So now.
Now we're back to the motion as amended, correct?
Yes, I believe Councillor Montgomery has withdrawn the remaining amendments. So we're back to the motion on the floor with the amendments we've added. Councillor Peterson. I'm looking to Kara's eyes a lot to help me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if a councillor has any other questions now, they are in order.
Okay. So do you have a question now, Councillor Peterson?
Yeah. Yes, I do, Your Worship. In a previous discussion on this matter regarding 5.2 and the owner of real property, one of the things that compelled me to accept this as a part of the bylaw was when Mr. Persons accurately pointed out that in our business bylaw, our business licensing bylaw, persons are required to, when taking out a business license, they're required to adhere to all legislation under the town. So once we pass this bylaw, we pass bylaw 20-15 as amended, the person that was setting up a business would then have to follow this. So my question is, if you were, as Councillor Cox pointed out, an unwitting landlord who, say, rented your an office building, an office space to, let's say, a practitioner of some kind, a councillor, and that councillor, unbeknownst to the owner, undertook to do something that was in violation of their own business license, would the owner still be deemed responsible? Or, as Jeff has described earlier, that they would not be held accountable because the business license holder had already been in violation. So if he could just elaborate on that, and I would be really grateful.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm actually really grateful that we've just completed the first reading of the business licensing bylaw. Under that bylaw, both the existing one and the proposed one, property owners aren't required to have a business license in Strathmore. And so a property owner wouldn't automatically be included as a business that must follow our bylaws. So that is a good reason to include this in here. I think it would also be useful to point out that this is a very strong bylaw, and I think that's Deputy Mayor Cox. That's something that you've pointed out. This is if this is a very controversial section, then I think that the
Mr. Mayor, you need a motion to extend the meeting.
We need a motion to extend the meeting. Councillor Corbeil, I see you nodding. No? Do you want to leave it for Councillor Montgomery? Councillor Montgomery?
No,
well, so we have
a motion on the floor.
Yeah. We have second reading on the floor right now. So do I have to withdraw that first?
Procedurally, do we need to withdraw the motion for second reading?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I would vote on second reading as amended, then deal with your meeting extension. And if there is another amendment, put it on the floor. Otherwise, move forward to third reading. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, and you were answering a question from Councillor Peterson.
I'll just be very brief, Your Worship. This does seem like a sticky amendment. I think that given the conversation, I don't think that this weakens it in a substantial enough way that I would encourage you to take it out. It seems like this is a very controversial section for council. I think that there's nothing meaningfully significant to taking this out. So I think that would probably help keep things brief.
Your worship, I would move that we amend the bylaw 20-15 by removing section 5.2.
So we're now voting on another amendment to remove 5.2 from the prohibited business bylaw. So is
Yes,
there
Mayor.
further discussion on that amendment as far as removing 5.2? Councillor Montgomery.
I just wanted to thank Councillor Peterson for making that motion. On reflection, I do believe that, yeah, it would be kind of a lot better to take this out. If there's a landlord that is, unwittingly has something going on, I would hate for them to be kind of captured within this bylaw. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have that motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Are there any other amendments that need to come forward? I believe Councillor Montgomery was okay with that last amendment being dropped. Does anyone else have an amendment that they would like to bring forward to that motion for second reading? Seeing none, I'll call that question regarding second reading. All in favor? Thank you. That motion carries. And I'm looking for a final motion. Councillor Montgomery.
I'll move we extend the meeting till 10:30.
Thank you. We have a motion to extend the meeting till 10:30. I grudgingly recognize that. And all in favor? Okay, so we extend to possibly 10:30, and we're looking for a possible motion on third and final reading. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 20-15, prohibited business bylaw. Does it have to be as amended? Or with amendments? I can't hear you, Pat. Sorry.
Sorry, you're okay with not adding that? So we do have your motion for third and final reading to bylaw number 20-15. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you, Jeff, for all your time and effort, and thank you for all your clarification tonight.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Appreciated. That brings us to 12.3, bylaw number 21-19, elections sign bylaw, page 140. Kara, are you speaking to this one? Or Deborah is?
Hi. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be speaking to this one. Administration is bringing back the election sign bylaw for third reading. Council asked for further information regarding the 30 meters from an intersection. We have attached the information from Alberta Transportation Guidelines that recommends that. We realize that it does say 50 meters and it does refer to a highway, but administration is recommending that this 30 meters be included in the bylaw as there's a potential of having numerous candidates for the election who could put numerous signs on the corners. And since there's already signage on there for traffic and other signs that are permitted within the town bylaws, once you add election signs to that, it could be a safety concern. So administration is recommending that that stays in there as the 30 meters from the intersections. There are many places in town where election signs can be placed. We just feel it's a safety issue. So we're just asking for third reading tonight.
Thank you. Are there questions first for Deborah or anyone in legislative services? Is that a question, Denise? Councillor Peterson? No? Then Councillor Peterson, are you prepared to make a motion?
I would move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 21-19, election sign bylaw.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor for third and final reading. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Your Worship, sorry, I was waving so I could speak to the motion, please.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what we can do now if the motion is carried. I guess I can let you have a statement if that's what you want.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, well, first of all, like, we don't really, like, there isn't a clear definition of what an intersection is. An intersection, does that include like a, you know, like a driveway or a back alley? You know, and it's kind of not clear what constitutes an intersection. And then the other issue, I believe 30 meters is too much. And it actually prohibits much of the town actually when you actually include, as I said, driveways or back alleys, parking lot entrances, all that kind of stuff. It basically wipes out a good portion of the town's public property.
Okay, I'm a little unsure what we can do now, other than could this bylaw come back at another time if he has an amendment to it concerning an intersection? Like right now, we've passed third and final reading. So I guess that's basically a councillor statement. Okay, I'm not really, every week I have something new and I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, which should scare the public really a lot.
Yeah, I mean, basically clarification of an intersection is anything that's traffic controlled. So basically if it's an alley or like a road intersection, alleys would not count as an intersection.
Does that help, Councillor Montgomery?
The actual highway, the road.
It would be an intersection that's actually controlled.
We could certainly add a specific definition into the bylaw. We've done third reading those, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that's all I wanted was just like some clarification about what constitutes an intersection, just so that, as I said, because it wasn't clear to me anyways, what
and
that
mainly,
would necessarily
Councillor
include.
Montgomery, to add to that, a lot of houses are on the corners. Certainly if a constituent wanted to put an election sign on their private property, that would be back from the intersection, and that would be different than having it on the town property right on the corners. And certainly they would never have all election signs on there from everyone in the running for the election. It would only be one sign, or maybe two.
Okay. Yeah, as long as I guess the public was clear on what constitutes an intersection, we'll make do, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now move on to 12.4, bylaw number 21-18, elections bylaw. And Kara, are you speaking to? No, Deborah again.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just 1 second, let me get my notes up. So administration is bringing forward just a revision to the current elections bylaw. We've made quite a few revisions, so that's why instead of doing an amendment, we brought a full bylaw back. The intent of the bylaw is to basically align it with the Local Authorities Election Acts, and it's basically more of a procedure so that candidates and the public can refer to that document rather than referring to the Local Authorities Election Act. The Act requires that there are several resolutions done as well for the returning officer, a designate returning officer, deputies to attend a elector who, because of a physical disability, is not able to attend a voting station. We also would like a resolution to provide for special ballots and to designate the institution for voting stations. And this is per as the Local Authorities Election Act that designates that we do that. The election bylaw also has been updated for our procedures for the election, which includes the type of voting machine that we will be using at this election. So we've included the actual procedure for that as well, so the public and candidates are aware of how the voting will take place and how the voting will be counted. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Deborah? Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. Just have to disappear here. My first question is, what is the process for obtaining a special ballot? I know that it's kind of spelled out, for instance, federally, what the process is as far as like getting ID and stuff like that, but it's not spelled out in our bylaw, and that concerns me. So I was just wondering, I guess what the expected process is at this point?
So I'm happy to speak to that, Councillor Montgomery. So the process in terms of how somebody applies for a special ballot is actually spelled out in 12.1, and that's in writing, by telephone, in person, and by email. The actual like procedure of how special ballots are put together is all covered under the Local Authorities Election Act, and so we would follow that detailed process that's spelled out in the Act.
Okay, and I like I said, I only looked at the federal one, but maybe you could just tell me what is the requirement for, let's say, providing identification and whatnot under the Local Authorities Election Act?
I will have to look that up. Sorry, Councillor Montgomery.
Oh, sorry. And
we'll provide that information, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, nobody else. Oh, sorry, Councillor Peters, if you want to go ahead, I can.
Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I only have a very general question, and that is, I just want to say I'm very appreciative of what I see in the great amount of work that detail. If in the horrible future potential that we were to have a fourth wave, are we well positioned to be able to expand the voting locations to other areas where we know there are high needs? So I'm talking about places like Lambert Center, other seniors, living accommodations. Are we well positioned to be able to shift to that if the need should arise?
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. We have made some alterations in case that does happen. In the past, we've used 2/3 of the Civic Center. We actually have the full Civic Center booked this time as well. And we've made accommodation to use the back of the Civic Center for exiting the voting station this time, so that we can keep everyone physically distanced while they're voting at the station. In the past, the last election that we had, we did have 2 early voting days. One was at the town office and the second was also at the Civic Center. We are planning to do that as well this time. We've extended our hours so that there will be lots of time for constituents to come and vote. And with also being at the new town office, we do have a lot more space here than we had at the old town office. So we do feel that we do have enough in place so far. We'll be hiring extra staff as well for the voting, and we will have cleaning protocols as well, and extra staff for that at the voting station as well, no matter what the case is, whether there's a fourth wave or not.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Montgomery, did you have your second question?
I do, thank you. So I noticed, so it's 16.3, section 16.3. It just mentions, if at the close of the poll, the returning officer is of the opinion that it is impracticable to count the vote with the vote tabulator, he or she may direct that all votes cast in the election be counted manually. I was just wondering under what circumstances it would be impracticable to count the vote with the vote tabulator.
So, thank you, Councillor Montgomery, for the question. In that circumstance, it really would be in case the tabulator failed. That is highly unlikely. In this circumstance, we will actually have a skilled technician on site. So the likelihood of that happening is almost none. But we obviously do have to account for everything, right, in terms of preparing our bylaw, and so we've put that in there just as like a last chance, last opportunity, if we needed it, but it's not necessary. We don't think we'll be needing that.
Okay, and I appreciate your thoroughness for sure. Excuse me. And the voting machine itself, what is the voting machine? Which particular voting machine is it?
The voting machine that we are using this year, it's one large voting machine. So basically in the past, we had some issues with individual tabulators. So the voters will be placing their ballots straight into the box. At the end of the evening, the boxes will be emptied, and all of them will be stacked and go through one large voting machine, which will take just, I don't know, 15 minutes or so just to count all the ballots. The voting machine is tested by a qualified technician that we have coming, and the ballots are usually ran through twice to verify that the information is correct. We also found the last time we used it that it was very accurate, and it was also good for any ballots that may have been spoiled in the past by putting in individual tabulators. We were able to actually, the machine spits those out onto the side, and we're actually to view them, the returning officer, and accept a lot of those votes that came in. So it's a very accurate system, and we've used it in the past, and it's worked fine for us.
Thank you. But as for the actual, let's say, brand of voting machine, do you know the brand of voting machine?
There are actually only 2 companies that provide voting devices, and we're going with ES&S Systems.
Okay. Thank you. And my last question, so it just and this is I was reading it, it kind of just seems circular to me. So 16.4, it says when voting tabulators are used, the returning officer shall, and then if you go to number E, it says seal and initial in the ballot boxes and immediately deliver the sealed ballot boxes, the vote tabulator and the ballot account to the returning officer. So the returning officer is, the voting officer will return that to themselves, essentially, is what I'm reading that as. And it's obviously not I'm assuming it just means that the voting or the returning officer will be in control of it, essentially the entire time.
That's correct. The returning officer will be overseeing it. We have ballot boxes that will be going to the institutions. So once that is done, the ballot boxes are sealed and are brought back to a locked area, so they're secure until we open them after the voting. And that's as well as the advance vote that's done as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel and then Councillor Corbeil.
I'm just ready with first reading, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I move that council give first reading to bylaw number 21-18, municipal elections bylaw.
Thank you. You've all heard the question, or you've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the council give second reading to bylaw number 21-18, municipal.
Thank you. Now that we have second reading, motion for second reading, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And the motion is carried. Councillor Peterson?
I move that council give unanimous consent to a third and final reading of bylaw 21-18, municipal elections bylaw.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Opposed?
I just want to see, I just wanted that information from administration about what the specifics of the Local Authorities Election Act. So I just want to know, is this going to be a problem if this isn't passed tonight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll get that information circulated tomorrow.
Does that help, Councillor Montgomery? They'll get the information to us tomorrow?
Okay, but is it a problem, like if this doesn't pass tonight? Is that going to cause any issues for administration?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this bylaw needs to be passed tonight. Thank you.
All right, I'll vote in favor as well then. Thank you. And yeah, if you could supply that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anyone prepared to make this next motion? I love it. Councillor Sobel?
Sure, thank you. I'd move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 21-18, Municipal Elections Act.
I think we had that,
Bylaw.
didn't we? No? Didn't we have a motion for third and final reading? Okay, sorry. Thanks, Councillor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I would move that council provide for the attendance of 2 deputies at the residence of an elector during the hours of an advanced voting during the hours an advanced voting station is open in order to take the votes of an elector who, because of a physical disability, is unable to attend a voting station or an advanced voting station to vote.
Thank you. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I will move that council provide for the acceptance of special ballots for electors who are unable to vote on election day or an advance vote at a voting station. Pardon me.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? That motion carries. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. I move that council designate the Wheatland Lodge, Aged Care Sagewood, and the Strathmore Hospital as the locations for institutional voting stations.
Thank you for that motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council appoint Ms. Kara Rusk to the role of returning officer and Ms. Deborah Hemrick to the role of substitute returning officer for the 2021 municipal election. And just a side note, thank you very much for the cheat.
Thank you for that. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. We have no urgent business tonight. Questions between councillors and or council statements. 14.1, Councillor Montgomery.
Your Worship, do we not have one more?
Do we have one more?
Oh, no, sorry, we moved.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Just one second. All right, thank you. More than 40 years ago, a group of dedicated citizens took upon the task of making what would become the jewel of Strathmore, Kinsman Park. This group, known as the Strathmore Kinsmen, contributed the machinery and labor it took to dig out what was a smaller pond at the time, contoured the land, and even planted trees that now tower over the park and provide shade for our residents to enjoy. Since that time, they have made other substantial contributions in the form of purchasing docks and fountains for the lake, as well as the amphitheater, which we know is well used on a yearly basis by the many residents who enjoy the various forms of entertainment that occur there. The park itself was celebrated with a dedication on July 6, 1986, and the placement of a rock with a plaque on it, and a time capsule that was to be reopened or opened 25 years later. During the lead up to the construction of the new Strathmore Municipal Building, our administration notified the Kinsmen that the rock and capsule would necessarily have to be moved to allow for the construction process that was to take place. According to what I've been informed, there was an agreement that made that the town would replace that rock once the construction process was concluded. For various reasons, this agreement has not yet been fulfilled. It is important that we show our appreciation to those who came before us and made Strathmore the wonderful place it is to call home by honoring the agreement we have made with the Kinsmen to the best of our ability and to their satisfaction. And with that, I move the council direct administration to work with a representative from the Kinsmen to reach an agreement regarding the replacement of the items that were removed and to provide a report on this to council at the September 1st regular council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Councillor Sobel.
I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I heard about 10% of that. I couldn't understand any of that. So I know I heard some key words, but I want to make sure that administration knows what's going on here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could Councillor Montgomery forward the motion to us electronically by email?
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that.
We don't know which part of it is the preamble to the actual motion.
Yeah.
I know that he wants administration to report to council by September 1st on the time capsule, but I'm not clear beyond that. So if we could get that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I will, I'll send that to everybody right away, pardon me.
If I could, and that was not meant as any kind of a slight, your voice is coming in very echoey in the chambers here, Councillor Montgomery. Very difficult to hear.
Yeah, my apologies for that. Okay, okay, I've sent that, and if you'd like, I can read it again, or if I'll leave it up to council, I guess, if you guys want me to read it again.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can read the motion now.
Yes, thank you.
That council direct administration to work with a representative from the kinsman to reach an agreement regarding the replacement of the items that were removed and to provide a report on this to council at the September 1st regular meeting.
Thank you.
And
So, go ahead, Councillor, or sorry, Mr. Legore.
if we could add in there replacement of the items from the time capsule, if Councillor Montgomery would be agreeable to that as a friendly amendment, so that it's clear what we're referring to.
So I'm under the impression that it's not just the time capsule, like it's also the rock that there's a plaque that was, basically dedicating the park. And I believe they're actually more concerned about the replacement of that rock than of the time capsule itself. And that's why I kind of left it up to administration to coordinate with this group, just to find out what they would be satisfied with, because there was a few items that they mentioned to me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we understand now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. We move on to 14.2, Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just would like to take a moment to offer congratulations to a local woman, Jessica Sevick, who will represent Canada in the sport of rowing at the 2021 Olympic Games in Tokyo. And I also like to thank the mayor for mentioning us on his Facebook page. Jessica Sevick is the daughter of Dr. Karen Sevick and Brian Sevick. And I thought it was just so remarkable and wonderful that when you look up Olympics.ca, you see Jessica Sevick, hometown, Strathmore, Alberta. It's an amazing accomplishment for this young woman. And I just want to wish her, on behalf of all of our community, success, more success than she's already have, safety, and all of our community's best wishes in what she's accomplished. And huge congratulations to her and her family. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And that's going to wipe out my comment because I was going to speak on the same thing, but I just want to add that I had the good fortune of coaching Jessica in basketball for many years as a little girl and then on to high school basketball. So she's an incredibly dedicated, hardworking athlete who always rises to the top. So very, very, very proud of her. Thank you. And are there any other... Councillor Montgomery?
Sorry, I was just wondering if we could maybe have administration through comms, maybe just kind of highlighting this accomplishment, and maybe just so we can kind of get some, some town, behind her essentially, and really get some focus on what she's accomplished and what she's doing over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Any other councillor comments, statements? Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I think that's a great idea, Councillor Montgomery. That would be great on there. I wanted to read this before a second reading was read on the prohibited business bylaw, and I wasn't acknowledged, and there was no time left. So I'm going to take this opportunity to read this, and I apologize for everybody, but this bylaw really meant a lot to me. I don't know, I can't remember when I brought this in and introduced it, but when I did, I read the following quote: "For myself, I consider this proposed bylaw to be one dealing with a very basic human right, To suggest a person's sexual orientation should be considered a curable disease or a mental disorder, one that requires therapy to, quote, fix the problem, unquote, is both archaic, dangerous, and very misguided. My desire with this motion has always been to enact a bylaw which very clearly demonstrates that our community is not okay with this type of activity and to urge both our provincial and federal governments to take appropriate action to ban this practice. I continue to try and understand many of the concerns that this proposed bylaw as written has generated. While I may understand the need for a person to seek guidance from a parent, a friend, or a pastor in trying to find their identity, but only, of course, in those situations where it's the person themselves doing the seeking, it simply seems wrong to have this very delicate and personal issue undertaken by a business or anyone whose only goal is to discourage a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. As well, hiring a business to perform an intervention in regards to someone not desirous of the action is, and I would hope everyone would agree, simply wrong. This bylaw does not threaten anyone's fundamental right to hold a belief, to preach from the pulpit or from the street, and or to discuss the issue of a person's personal sexual preference with that person. But the line should be drawn when this becomes nothing more than business as usual. Administration was cognizant of a municipal council's responsibility when it comes to our residents' communal health. And let's be clear, this issue deals very specifically with mental and physical health. I thank them for their focus and desire to create a bylaw that fits our community. A council derives its power to become involved in businesses, business activities, and persons engaged in business from Section 7 of the Municipal Government Act. And that same section empowers councils to pass bylaws respecting the safety, health, and welfare of people and the protection of people and property. Section 9 of the MGA specifies that the power to make bylaws is intended to enable councils to respond flexibly to present and future concerns. It gives broad authority to councils and respects their right to govern municipalities in whatever way the council considers appropriate within the jurisdiction given to them. Interfering in how a business operates is not an action I take lightly, but the potential harm to a fellow human being makes this, for me, an easy choice. I'll conclude by borrowing some words that I wrote down some time ago, quite a while ago, and they were spoken by a Calgary councillor who was speaking on this very issue, and I find them very relative to this matter. When we promote hatred, it's labeled a crime. When we promote self-hatred, it's labeled a therapy. But promoting self-hatred is not therapy. It is simply the promotion of hatred. I'm so happy that we were finally able to pass this bylaw, Your Worship, and I thank you and Council for their time.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. This brings us to administrative inquiries. Deborah?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have an administrative inquiry from Councillor Montgomery. Can the town please report on what their stance is on the use of herbicides in the general by park staff and what the current strategy to deal with dandelions is? Please also provide the background sources of information that these policies are derived from.
That's it? There's no more? You mean our meeting's going to be over? All right, Council, congratulations. Yeah, I want to congratulate and thank all of you. It was a long meeting, but we accomplished a great deal tonight, and we've made some really strong moves tonight. So thanks to everyone, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn at 10:07. All in favor? And a motion is